Hello. Hi, Patricia. I've got you on mute. Wait there. I'm going to unmute you because you're the only person on at the moment. So while we're waiting for other people, oh, here's someone else. Nicola's joining us. Hi, Nicola. I'm going to put you all on mute so that as people join us, we don't get loads of noise coming in. And I'm going to give people a few minutes to join us because I know that depending on where people are in the world, this might be the middle of bedtime, or it might be the middle of the day, in which case people might have been doing things with their family on a Sunday and things like that. Oh, my beautiful friend Whitney is here. Whitney is a very special woman. Well, we're all very special women, but Whitney played a very, very special role in me doing what I do today. She might not actually realize that, but she did. So it's great to have Whitney here. And other people are joining. So I'm just going to let the next 2 or 3 minutes be a time for people to join in. While I'm doing that, let me just share with you guys a few technical things. I'm not very technical myself, so I'm open to the fact that we could have some technical hitches along the way. I want to keep this call to an hour maximum. I want to really honour and value your time and your energy as mums and dads, if there's any dads on here. And that's really important to me because you're giving your time to me, and I really love that you're here and you want to learn from me. But I really want to make sure that I don't waffle and go on. So I've got some little notes here that I'm going to use to help me stay focused. And what I want to do is I really want to hopefully spend the first 30 minutes sharing incredibly valuable content, tips, things like that. All the things that I promised you when you signed up for this webinar, I'm going to really focus on those in the first 30 minutes. I'm also going to tell you about the most fantastic group coaching program that I'm launching, and I can't wait to share that with you. I'm so excited. And then I'm going to open up the rest of the call for you guys to ask me any questions that you might have. Now, there's 2 ways you can do that. At any point during this call, if you have a question, you can throw it in the chat area, and I will then come to it when we get to the Q&A time. Or you can, when we get to the Q&A time, you can, if you go to your little menu area and have a look around there, there's an option to raise your hand. And it gives me a little notification that says, I don't know, for example, Jacqueline has raised her hand. So then I can unmute Jacqueline and invite her to ask her question live. And we'll work it out. It, like I said, I'm not technically brilliant, but we will get there. Okay. So here we go. I am going to, we've had 5 minutes, and like I said, I really want to honor your time. So if you don't know me, or at least haven't really known of me before now, my name is Bea. I'm the founder of Yes Parenting, and I am all about helping mums around the world to have the most extraordinary relationships with their kids without having to spend time and energy on punishment, coercion, and things like that. I help mums to have the most incredibly connected, peaceful, joyful relationships with their kids. Now, what I don't promise is perfection. I'm not saying that your kids are never going to act out in any way. I'm not saying you're never, ever going to lose your temper again. But the mums who work with me experience a really dramatic shift in their relationship with their kids, and it mirrors my own journey. And when I became a mum 12 years ago, I felt completely anchorless. I had a newborn who cried constantly. I mean, literally constantly. We had, I think, out of every 24 hours, we had about 4 hours where he didn't cry because amazingly he slept or fed. And we actually had to have a rota with friends who would come and take him out for a walk because it was just so exhausting. And as you can imagine, everybody had some piece of advice for me about supporting, this brand new baby who just cried and cried and cried. And that support was everything from, feed him on demand to feed him every 4 hours to, never let him fall asleep on you, always put him down, always keep him on you when you're asleep. I mean, it was just, there was just so much advice, and I felt completely anchorless. And what I completely lost touch with was my own inner wisdom. And what I grabbed hold of was Super Nanny. And Super Nanny back then in 2004 was all over the media everywhere. And she made it over to America, and she was huge in the UK, and she probably took over the world. And what Super Nanny promised was that if I did things how Super Nanny said to do them, so timeout and star charts and, very clear warning signals, then what would happen was I would have this lovely, compliant little boy that did what I said and would be happy, and it would be marvelous. And it really wasn't. I spent a lot of time and energy trying to make the timeout work, or trying to get my child to do what I thought he should do. He was only 2, like 18 months, then 2, then he was around 3 when I had this transformation in my approach. And he was so little, and basically Super Nanny made me think that he should be able to do all these things that really now I realize was ridiculous. But I really bought into Super Nanny because she promised me something that I was desperate for. And what she promised was ease. She promised that my relationship with him would be wonderful, that he would do as he was told, and all of these kinds of things, that it would be easy. And actually it was anything but. So when he was about 3, or just before he was 3, I had an extraordinary experience that turned everything around and set me on the path to find a different way of parenting. And I accidentally developed Yes Parenting, which is now what I stand for, and I love it, and I love supporting mums around the world in Yes Parenting. So that's that's who I am, and that's what brings me here. And what I want to do is share with you 3 simple ways to get your kids to listen, because in my experience, one of the key factors that led me to explode with rage, or to fantasize about throwing my child out the window, or throwing my child against a wall, or running away, or any of those things, that those points that you get to when you're just at the end of every resource you have. And it nearly always starts with the fact that your kid isn't listening. And that's something that I have seen time and time again, is when our children are not listening to us, or not doing what we say or what we want, that's when it connects and triggers something inside us. And then we often find that begins to build its own momentum, and we can then lose control. And I am not ashamed in any way, and I am not wanting to hide the fact that, there were several years in my own parenting journey when I experienced that rage just kind of come up like an outer body experience, and kind of come out of my mouth and just kind of like spew all over my children. And I would say things I wished I hadn't said, and I would yell and scream, and I would see these little boys like being a little bit, not a little bit scared, being very scared. And that was my experience, and that is not my experience anymore. But I know what that's like, and I know what it's like to just be desperate for your child to go to sleep so you can sit down and have some alone time. So I understand those things because I have had that parenting experience. But now that I practice Yes Parenting, I don't anymore. So let me tell you first why your kids are not listening. The reason your kids are not listening is because we as parents, so you, are not communicating to them in a way that they understand. it's not as simple as the fact that you're speaking the same language as them. So whether you're speaking English or Spanish or German or, whatever language you speak, it is not enough to be speaking the same language as them. And it is not enough to know that they don't have a hearing impediment. The fact that they may be able to hear the noise that's coming out of your mouth, and I think often it is just noise to them, that is not enough for them to be able to hear what you have to say. So that is the reason that your child is not listening, because you are not communicating in a way that they can understand. So let me share with you how to easily handle your child's objections, frustrations, and questions. Because that's another thing is we think that we have something essentially quite simple to share with our child, or a simple request. And actually what happens is they come back, it doesn't matter what age they are, whether they're a small child or an older child or a teenager or even a young adult, they will come back with objections, frustrations, and questions. And I want you to know that that's okay. It is okay for them to have this sovereignty over the fact that they are a unique human being creating their own reality on this planet. It just so happens that the first 20 years or so of that, they're living with you, that they are no less equal to you. So it's okay for them to have frustrations and objections and things like that. And what I want to do is just talk you through a really simple way to respond to them. That means they're going to listen to you and they're going to know that you're listening to them. The first step is that you need to validate what they're saying. So you can say, I hear you. You sound like you feel, or you sound like you're thinking, and then repeat back to them what they feel or what they think. So I hear you. You're feeling cross because you don't want to go to the shops with me. Or I hear you. It sounds like you're thinking I'm asking too much of you. Whatever you think it is, repeat it back to them. And then you can repeat back to them what it is that they would like. So, because hopefully what they're going to do is say, yeah, I don't want to go to the shops, or, whatever it is. And you can say, okay, so you would really like to stay at home. Or you would really like me to wait until dad comes home so that you don't need to come. Whatever it is, you repeat back to them what it is that they would like. And really listen to them. We get so cross and upset that our kids are not listening to us, but so often we're actually not listening to them. So really listen to them so that you can connect with what they're thinking and feeling and what they would like. And take a moment to consider how you might be able to accommodate what it is that they would like. In the same way that if it was your partner or your best friend expressing an objection or a frustration or something, in that situation, you would give them your attention and take time to see how you might be able to accommodate them. So I would like you to take a moment to really consider how you can accommodate your child's requests if possible. And it won't always be possible, but the fact that you took time to listen to them, that you validated and affirmed their thoughts and their feelings, will actually mean that they are so much more able to respond to what it is that you're requesting of them. So that's a really useful and simple way to engage with our kids, so that by actively listening to them, they begin to actively listen to us. And let me now move on to share, now that I've kind of set that up as a background, 3 simple ways to connect and respond to your child so that you can engage them every single time. So I said at the beginning that just because we're speaking the same language as them, and just because we know that they can hear the noise, it doesn't actually mean to say that they can hear us, that they're listening. So the first simple way is you can break through this kind of barrier where what they hear is like, so you're here and you're trying to kind of like speak into their ear. Like, I mean, you might be a few meters away, you don't have to be this close, but you're speaking, and as your words travel through the air, they get completely mashed up, and so they go into your child's head as like, and your child doesn't respond to you. So we need to kind of break that pattern of what happens to your words as they travel through the air. And the easiest and simplest way to do that is with physical touch. So often, in order to save time or energy, we'll call through to our kids, or we'll stand at the door and we'll speak to them. And then we get frustrated because they don't turn off the video game, or they don't lift their head up from their Legos, or, you know, they've got their nose in a book, or whatever they're doing. They're drawing. They're so focused on what they're doing. If we just take a few extra steps and go over to them, and we put our hands on their shoulders, or, you know, whatever feels appropriate in the relationship that you have with your child. For me, with my two sons, I would do it differently with each of them. You know, I know that they would prefer a different form of physical touch. So make physical touch with them, and then wait for them to respond to that physical touch, and then speak. So that's the first simple way, is take the extra few steps that you need to take and engage with them physically before you even say anything. Okay? Or you might put your hands on them and say, I don't know, like my son is called Joss. Joss, can I chat with you for a moment? So that's the first thing. The second simple thing that you can do is to wait until they're ready to listen. So often our children are really engaged in what they're doing. It's a little bit, if you imagine, you know, you're sitting down to work through some life admin, maybe you're paying bills, or you're sitting down at your computer and you're doing some work, and your child comes to you and they're like, Mom, da 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 da. Often we're really focused in what we're doing, and we'll be like, oh, you know, just a minute. We just want to get to the end of the paragraph. We just want to finish that little form. You know, there's a natural stopping place for us, and then we're ready to respond to our child. Our children are no different. So it's a really obvious thing, but it's something that even I forget sometimes, is to wait until they're ready to listen. So we've engaged with them, and we may have said, you know, can I chat to you for a moment? But then if we just give them the time that they need to finish putting together that Lego that they're doing, or just to get to a pause point in their game or their YouTube video, or to get to the end of a page in the book that they're reading, or maybe they're in a text conversation with a friend, whatever it is, if we can just wait for them, although it feels often as mums, I don't have the time to wait. Actually, if we just take that short amount of time to wait, we save so much time and energy in the next few minutes, because when our child turns to us to listen, they're really ready to listen. And we haven't wasted time and energy speaking to them before they're ready. So that's the second simple way to get your kid to listen, is to wait for them to be ready to listen. And then my third simple way is to speak to them as you would speak to a guest in your home. So I remember once as a kid, we used to get, well, in fact we still do here, but we used to get the milk delivered in bottles by the milkman to the door. So you'd go up, when you were ready for your milk in the morning, you'd open the front door and your milk was on the doorstep, and you'd bring it in. And I happened to be one of those children who was particularly clumsy. And I was probably more clumsy because I was labelled as being clumsy. And I remember one day I was carrying the milk and I dropped it, not on purpose, I just dropped it, and it smashed, and the whole pint of milk just went everywhere. And I was really told off. Like, I can't remember exactly what it was said, but, you know, it's like, how could you be so clumsy? You should have been more careful. What do you think you were doing? And I mean, I have wonderful parents. You know, they certainly didn't yes parent me, and they made their fair share of mistakes. But, you know, they were wonderful parents, but they still did this really common thing of just coming down on me like a ton of bricks with really high expectations. And what I remember most about that milk bottle incident was, not so long later, it happened again, but with one of their friends. And the way they responded to their friend was, don't worry about it, it's not a problem, we'll clear it up, it's fine. And that really stood out to me at the time, because here was their friend, an adult, who has had so many more years on earth to practice carrying milk bottles. And yet when they dropped it, it wasn't a problem. They were able to respond to it really calmly and without putting any kind of blame on their friend. But when it was me, because my parents, like so many parents, had this real sense of, we need to teach our children how to grow up properly, their response to me was that I had done something hugely wrong, and I had this massive experience of having made a huge mistake, that there must be something wrong with me, and that I found that really hard. And that's not an isolated incident. I can remember lots of times where actually the way that I was spoken to was very, very different to the way my parents might have spoken to a guest in their home. And this is something that I have been aware of myself doing when my kids were younger, before I changed the way I parented. And this is something I hear parents doing in supermarkets, in playgrounds, and things like that. We have this habit of speaking to our children in a way that is so much harsher and with such high expectations compared to how we would speak to them if they were a guest in our home. And I think that what happens when we do that is our kids begin to switch off to us. Because if what they hear coming at them is that they got something wrong again, that they're always clumsy, they're always dropping things, they're always rude, if what they're hearing, because of our desire to teach them or show them, how to grow up well, we're always pointing out, what they're doing wrong, instead of just responding gracefully to them, they begin to stop listening to us. So when we speak to them, as we would speak to a guest in our own home, and really our children are guests in our home. When we speak to them as guests in our home, then our children are open and happy to listen to us, because they have no reason to block out what it is that we're going to say. So having shared those 3 simple ways, let me talk to you about how to handle your child if you have a child who has attitude. Now, I hear this from moms. They have like a tween, they have a 2 or a 3-year-old who's going on 13 or 14, or, an 8, 9 or 10-year-old or a teenager. And their child has this attitude. And it's kind of like, it doesn't matter how you speak to them or what you say to them, they just respond with attitude. And again, what we are so quick to do as parents is to try and change their behavior, to try and correct them or teach them to do it differently. And what I want to say to you is that every single behavior has a positive intention. So when they respond to you with that attitude, there is a positive intention behind it. And there are lots of layers to this that I could go into now, but I'm going to save it for another time. There are lots of layers to this, but what I want to say to you is, because it has a positive intention, you don't need to try and change it, and you don't need to react to it. What I'd really encourage you to do is just take a moment and breathe. And the best way to breathe in that situation is what is known as a reverse deep breath. So instead of a regular deep breath where you take a big breath in and then you blow out, a reverse deep breath is where you blow all of the air that's currently in your body all the way out until there's absolutely no air left at all. And then you just allow your lungs to automatically fill again. And it has a completely different effect on your nervous system. So when you're confronted with the attitude, do a reverse deep breath, because nothing is going to happen in that moment when you take your reverse deep breath that's going to cause any major problems. What is going to happen is you're going to be able to respond from a different place. And I would encourage you to respond from a place of joyful compassion and kindness and connection. When my kids have an attitude with me, in fact, only one of them does, the other one never has attitude. But my youngest son, who's 10, he can really give attitude. And so often I will respond to him with a smile and a hug. and I will say, I love you. I love that you have this ability to so clearly say what you want. Or, you know, I really admire how strong you are as a person. And I learn a lot from you. And what I'm sharing is really authentic things. I'm choosing to see my son, who is still a child, where they're demonstrating these incredible strengths, but without the full development of a human being. And then once I've done that, because I've connected with joy and peace and kindness, he and I are both in a different place. And in that place, I can then say to him, you know, would you be willing to be more polite when you speak to me? Or could you speak to me with more kindness? Or I would really appreciate it if when you talk to me, you use a gentler voice. You know, I just share what I would like. And of course, my child can choose not to do that. But our children, they want to get it right. You know, children are not growing up with a desire to be bad humans. Our children are constantly looking for, how do I grow up and thrive as a human being? How do I grow up and succeed as a human being? So when we respond to this attitude with kindness, love, and connection, and then we ask them, if they would be willing to speak with more kindness or to be more polite, we're actually just giving them a really clear guideline about how to behave in a way that is going to support them as human beings on this planet. So I want to really encourage you to try that when your child responds to you with attitude, and let me know how you get on. So just a reminder that if you have any questions, then go ahead and put them in the chat area, or the other option is that you can raise your hand. But before I answer questions, I really want to share with you about my brand new group coaching program that I'm launching. Now, I am super excited. I have never done a group coaching program before. So this is the first one I've ever done. I have been essentially pulling this together since June, when I was on, one of the things that I do as part of my work is that I'm a national parenting expert within the media in the UK, and I sometimes do stuff in other countries as well. And I was on a live TV debate about punishment in parenting. And my position was that, you know, there is no need to ever punish our children, which got a huge reaction. It actually happened to jam Twitter at the time. And what I realized was actually, for so many parents, this idea of being able to parent without punishment is just completely like foreign, just amazing. So I started creating videos and sharing posts and things like this and answering questions about this idea of parenting without punishment. And I realized that this is such an important message for parents, because when we begin to parent without punishment, everything completely transforms in our experience of our relationship with our children and in our whole experience of parenting. So what I've done is I've developed a 6-week group coaching program, unsurprisingly called Parenting Without Punishment. And I want to tell you a little bit about it, because what I'm doing is opening this up to you guys. You guys are the very first people to hear about this. And I'm opening up to you. I'm doing an early bird price for the first 3 days, but you guys get that option to do that first. And the first 10 women that sign up for this program are going to get a 1-hour group coaching. So that's 10 women in a group together with me doing on-the-spot coaching at the end of this 6-week program, so that you get this incredibly kind of amazing like bubble of support at the very, very end to ensure that you kind of, you know exactly what you're doing. So the first thing to say is that it absolutely is possible to raise amazing kids without using punishments, consequences, rewards, and bribes. And some of you might be like, rewards? What? But actually, when we reward our children, when we use rewards to encourage them to do a certain behavior, it's actually working in exactly the same way as a punishment. And this is the things that I'm going to explain and help you understand in this 6-week group coaching program. So this program is for you if you've always thought that punishment and rewards are essential to parenting and raising great kids, or you know it should be possible to parent without punishments, but you don't really know how to start because you're worried that you'll just raise kind of wild children that are not considerate of anyone. And this program is also for you if this is a style of parenting that you've been working towards for a while, that you feel like you have a base level of understanding, but you've not mastered it yet. So you're still losing your temper, you're still finding it really difficult to know how to respond to unwanted behavior without punishment, but in a way that resolves things for everybody. So this is who this program is for. And what I know from having been a parent that used to rely on punishment and rewards, and now being a parent that never, ever punishes my children. In fact, I very rarely even say no, but that's a whole other skill that we'll talk about during the course, is that when we're using punishment and rewards, parenting can become this dance that's made up of shouting, frustration, arguments, tantrums, and disobedience. And we are always, as parents, trying to be the person who's in control. And so we're spending all this precious time and energy making sure that we're sticking to the consequences that we've set so that our kids can learn to do better. And our focus is always on trying to train or teach our children how to behave appropriately. And we end up resigning ourselves to this repeated pattern of our children testing limits and pushing boundaries as if that's like normal. We start to expect that that's a normal part of parenting. And I want to tell you that it's not normal at all. It's absolutely possible to raise these incredible, beautiful human beings who don't test limits or push boundaries. The other thing I know, when we parent with punishments or rewards, we get to the end of the day and we're absolutely exhausted. We're desperate for our kids to be asleep so that we can have this hard-earned alone time. And, essentially we're just kind of recovering in order for the next day where we have to go through this all again. And then the other layer of this, that some of us, those of us who kind of have an empathic response to the world, who have this kind of like deep awareness of what's going on, will feel this more than others. But I think that every single mother experiences this, is that we hurt on the inside when we experience disconnection from our children. And whenever we are operating with some form of punishment or reward to get our child to behave in a certain way, there is a disconnection in our relationship. And on a very primal level, that hurts. And that's a very difficult thing, I think, to live with, and to live with that constantly, because we're raising our child, with these ongoing consequences and punishments and things. And it's this never-ending cycle. Because one thing I know from talking with parents all the world over is using punishments, consequences, rewards, or bribery doesn't actually create a transformative change in your child's behavior in any kind of rapid way. You have to stay consistent in these practices in order to see change at some point in the future. And with that can often come the worry that your child is going to get to a point where they're going to be able to rebel because they're going to realize that they have just as much power as you. And having had all of that experience, and now as the founder of Yes Parenting and practicing Yes Parenting, I know that it's possible to do things in a very different way that doesn't involve anything of that picture of parenting that I've just shared. So Parenting Without Punishment is this 6-week group coaching program that I have developed that's going to show you how to have a demonstrably different approach to your child's unwanted behavior. So I'm not promising you that your child is never going to behave in a way that you don't want. But what I am promising you is that you are going to learn how to respond to it in such a different way that the whole fabric of your parenting experience is going to change. And within this 6-week group coaching program, we're going to have a live group call every single week where I will unpack the theory and the practice and the understanding that you need to be able to make the necessary changes. We're going to do a very similar format to this call. So there'll be about 30 minutes of me sharing this incredible value content, and then 30 minutes of you having an opportunity to ask questions, to get on the spot coaching, and to experience the transformational coaching that I do on a daily basis with my clients. I'm going to break the program down into 6 weekly topics so that you can make changes in this kind of step-by-step way, so that you're going through a process of transformation, because that will lead to lasting change. I don't want anybody investing in themselves or in their family unless they're going to get lasting change. The other thing that's part of this is an exclusive Facebook group. And in that Facebook group, I am going to be sharing my insights, my reflections around parenting without punishment via Facebook Live. So you'll be able to interact with me. And I will also be in there responding to your posts and supporting you as an amazing community as you develop these incredible relationships with each other. And you're surrounded by other mamas who have similar values to you, who want to raise their children in this respectful, connected, peaceful way. So that daily support is going to be there as well. And then, of course, you know, I'm going to be sending emails and things like that. I'm going to be giving you the resources that you need so that you can go deep with this stuff, not just learning the practical application, but how to do the inner work on yourself so that you don't get triggered in the same way. So all of that is available at an early bird price. This early bird price is available until midnight on midnight on Wednesday, not even Tuesday, midnight on Wednesday. I'm making it available for 72 hours. And if you're working in pounds, that early bird price is only £97 for 6 weeks. Or if you're working in dollars, it's $149. When the early bird closes, it leaps up significantly. So I'm letting you in on this early bird price before anyone else. The other thing I want you to know is that the first 10 women, as I mentioned earlier, the first 10 women who sign up will get this incredible bonus group call, just the 10 women, to have this really intimate, on-the-spot coaching, Q&A, working through some of these deeper issues in a way that is going to just really add so much value onto the work that they've already put in during the course. I'm also going to share with you my ebook. I'm going to give you this for free. It's called Seven Ways to Get Your Kids to Listen. And it expands on everything I've shared with you in this webinar today. So where I've shared 3 ways today, in my ebook, I share 7 ways, loads of new content. I've not shared it anywhere else before. And I'm giving that as a gift to every single person who signs up for Parenting Without Punishment. And then the final bonus is that every single person who completes Parenting Without Punishment will be given a 30-day free trial of my monthly subscription membership group, which is called Yes Parenting for Happy Families. And it's the most incredibly supportive environment. The women in there say it's a little bit like being in a village. It's having that incredible support around you as you raise your children. And within it as well is unlimited online coaching from me, as well as other resources. So there is so much to share with you in this 6-week course, and I'm really excited to get going. So what I'm going to do before I move on to the Q&A is I'm going to put the link to sign up in the chat bar. So those of you who are like, I need this, I want this, I have to change the way that I'm raising my kids because I'm fed up of arguments, I'm fed up of tantrums, I'm fed up of my own rage spilling out, I'm fed up of just feeling like where is the joy that, where is the joy in the parenting? Because every single day, I'm having to go through this cycle of, sticking to punishments and consequences and things like that. So I'm going to put the link in here now so that those of you who are ready to sign up right now can. And I'm going to send an email out to you all as well, which has the all of the details in it and the link in it as well with the replay of this webinar. So you'll get that option as well. But remember, the first 10 women will get this bonus live call with me. So having told you all about that, oh, and also the other thing that I need to tell you, which is really important, is the program starts a week tomorrow. So it starts on the 17th. So you've got a week to sign up, but you've only got until the end of Wednesday to get it at the early bird price. And we start on Monday the 17th, and you'll get all of the information in your welcome email. Okay, let me see what these questions are. Emily says, the thing I worry about with yes parenting is when they go to school, will the school's punishment and reward system just completely mess up everything we work towards? Will they react really badly when punished at school, when usually we would respond with understanding and love? Yeah, that's an amazing question. The answer, I would say, is no, it won't mess anything up. By parenting your child in a way that responds to their needs and their preferences and their interests, whilst maintaining really clear personal boundaries and protecting their boundaries, is that you're raising a child who has this really strong sense of self. So by the time they get to school, they're not making decisions based on whether they're going to get punished or rewarded. They're making decisions based on what it means to be a wonderful human being. So they're making decisions based on principles of kindness, generosity, honesty, respect, gratitude, all those kinds of things. And all of that fits in really well within a school environment. So although schools do use punishments and rewards, because, at the end of the day, a school is working really hard to manage groups of about 30 children with 1 or 2 adults to get through a certain sequence of events, but children who've experienced yes parenting, they fit in a wonderful way, and they just respond and adapt to the mechanisms within the school in the same way that they respond and adapt to different people. So my boys learned really quite quickly what to expect when they spent time with my parents, and they learned quite quickly the different ways my parents did things that weren't yes parenting, and and all that kind of stuff, and they adapted for my parents. And that ability to adapt is a really valuable skill as a human being, and when your child goes to school, they will have that same ability to adapt, and they will pick it up really quickly. So so practicing yes parenting and parenting with this kindness, this compassion, acceptance, etc., can only support your child as they go into the school world. Nicholas says, how do you step back and what do you do differently when you reach the point of resorting to punishment? How do you get a change in behavior when your child is really not listening and keeps on behaving in a way that is inappropriate and thinks it's funny? Okay, Nicola, there are about 3 or 4 things in that are very specific parts of the Parenting Without Punishment course, that the group coaching program that I just talked about. We're going to go into them in depth. We're going to look at them in terms of the theory and the understanding, the practical application, and we're going to take our time with it, and we're going to really explore it very deeply. The time when you step back is before you get to that point of resorting to punishment. And I think we all have a very that distance between where we are when we're chilled out and calm and everything's fine, and that point where we find ourselves wanting to resort to punishment. That distance is different for each of us. So the place to step back is at the earliest point where you begin to notice that your desire to change your child's behavior, to control them, to want to do that is starting to grow in you. And that's the point when you have to step back. And there are lots of ways that you can do that. the first way would be to do a reverse deep breath, because it resets all of that, all of the bits inside you that are kind of starting to bubble up, and kind of, that cortisol and that adrenaline, that's leading you to that point of wanting to punish. And when you do a reverse deep breath, what it's going to do is it's going to bring a lot of that back down again. It helps you come back to a place of being calm. And the other thing to do is to really begin to explore and understand what the relational dynamic actually is when we punish our children. And this is something that we start to explore in the very first week of Parenting Without Punishment. I go into this in quite a lot of detail, because it's not something that our culture, certainly in the Western world, it's not something that our culture really explores or talks about within the public realm of parenting. Punishment is such an accepted and normal part of raising children. Although in a lot of places now, for example, spanking isn't accepted anymore. Confiscating screens or grounding our children, or withholding things, time out. There are still so many forms of punishment that are completely acceptable still to many, many people. So within Parenting Without Punishment, I go into this and I'm going to really help everyone understand what the relational exchange is when we step into punishment. Because when we begin to understand that relational exchange, we find ourselves beginning to transform our behavior anyway, because the majority of us don't want to have that relational exchange with our children. The other thing you ask is, how do you get a change in behavior when your child is really, someone just put a question and it jumped up. When your child is really not listening and keeps on behaving in a way that is inappropriate and thinks it's funny. This might not be what you want to hear, but what your child is doing in this situation, I would say this is in 95% of times, your child has learned over time that is the best way to get your attention and connection. So what your child is essentially saying to you is, my needs for attention and connection are not being met, and this is how I'm going to meet them. So they've learned that behaving in a certain way gets a certain reaction. To then respond to that reaction in a certain way builds the reaction, so that even though ultimately they get a very negative form of attention and connection with you, it meets their need in the best way that they can. So bearing that in mind, I would encourage you to really look at how to meet your child's need for attention and connection. Connection more than anything, to be honest. But some humans, I'm one of them, have a naturally higher need for attention. So we are the children who get called, we have attention-seeking behavior, which is often seen as a negative thing, whereas actually it's just a child trying to say, I have a big need for this, please would you meet it? But unfortunately our culture sees it as negative and tries to squash it, which works against us. But start to look at how you can connect with your child consistently from the minute they wake up until the minute they go to bed. And as they begin to see that their needs for connection and attention are being met without this behavior that they've learned, then you'll start to see their behavior change. And that's a very quick whistle stop kind of explanation. And I would really love it if you decided to jump on board with Parenting Without Punishment. We'll be going into these things in so much greater depth and detail, and you'll be able to get one-on-one kind of like coaching within the group and on the live calls. And I would, really love to help you with it. Okay, so Kat says, hi B, Tilly has started objecting to going in the car seat and the buggy. How do I work out what the issue is? I let her choose between two suitable seats and talk to her about why we need the seat and where we are going, but it makes no difference. Yeah, that's really tricky because Tilly's 2. Is she 2? I think Tilly's 2. There are definitely times when, what we absolutely need to do as parents and what our children are absolutely not willing to do just seem to completely clash. And I think there are times like that. I think this buggy or car seat one is a really classic example of where I don't think there is an easy solution. The solution requires us as adults to say, well, I don't want to force my child into a car seat or into a buggy, and therefore I need to allow this much extra time to transition with my child through that process. And perhaps we do other things like spend time in the car where you're just, playing, hanging out, reading books, listening to music. I would start to question and explore whether her need is one of she wants to control the situation. Perhaps she's uncomfortable. She can't see properly. Maybe she's bored. Maybe she'd actually just prefer to be walking. I'm not sure, but I would look at what are all the things that you can do with the resources you have available. You only have so much time and energy and creativity in terms of finding solutions. I know, Kat, because you're in my membership group, I know that you have a lot on your plate with your other children and other situations in your life. So there's only so much you can do with the resources you have available. And I think that if you are doing as much as you can to find a yes, that's all you can do. If we still lived in, tribal setups or, let's say we lived kind of 100 years ago when we weren't isolated like we are now. We all lived in houses really close to each other. And if your child didn't want to go somewhere with you, then you could just say to, the mum next door, who you probably were kids in and out of each other's houses, you could just say, would you have Tilly for a couple of hours? I need to go and do this errand. And that other mum would probably be like, yeah, not a problem, and it would we would have had that support, and we don't have that support now. So I think, sometimes there is only so much you can do. And when you've done all of that, then you just know that you did your best, and you're not perfect. And maybe there isn't always a yes that we can find in that moment. And I think that we have to accept that, because that's part of this imperfection that we have as humans. And, we are imperfect as parents. Our children are imperfect, in being humans. And we're doing our best. And if you're doing your best and your attitude and your intention is coming from love and kindness and compassion, that's the most wonderful thing that you can give her. And I think you just have to do your best. And I hope that helps. I wish I could I know in so many areas I have this magic wand and I can kind of wave a magic wand and I bring really rapid transformation. And then there are other areas where, you just have a 2-year-old who will not do a certain thing. And you have, I guess, start by saying, do I really have to do this thing? Or is there another way around it? And if there isn't another way around it, then try and bring all of the resources that you have available to try and help you find the best solution. That's great. Thank you. Awesome. Okay, so we just have 5 more minutes. Does anybody else have a question at all about getting your kids to listen, or about the Parenting Without Punishment program, or anything like that? Okay. So let me just, there's more people here that I didn't know were here. Let me just check no one's got their hands up. I don't think anyone has. Okay, awesome. So if no one else has got any more questions, I am going to leave it here. If you're not yet a member of my Facebook group, which is called Discovering Yes, I really recommend you go join that, because you may have questions that come up in the next day or two as you think about this stuff and you put it into practice. And that's a wonderful place to ask those questions, get amazing support. There's like 750 women or 800 women, I think, in that group, and some dads. And I'm there as well. So do go and join Discovering Yes, and feel free to ask questions in there. And you know, I will do my best to support you, and so will other people. Oh, Patricia says, how do you stop hitting without punishment? I have a video on my professional page, and I think it's in Discovering Yes as well. I will try and share it. Let me make a note of it now. I will share it so that you can watch it. It's all about responding to violent kids without punishment, and how to help your 5-year-old listen without multiple repetition. Go back to the 3 simple ways that I talked about when you watch the replay. Go back to the 3 simple ways and use those, because I've tried them time and time again with children of all ages, and I know that they worked. And if they're still not working, then it's because there's another layer of something going on that needs to be resolved in order for your child to shift their behaviour. Okay, I'm just gonna make a note about this video. Okay, great. So I'm going to get this recording uploaded to YouTube so I can send it out as a replay. I'm really looking forward to seeing you in my 6-week program, Parenting Without Punishment. Do join Discovering Yes if you're not yet a member, so that you can carry on this conversation. I really love to help mums with this, because I'm absolutely passionate about transforming the relationships we have with our kids. And I want you to have the best relationship possible with your own children. It's been such a pleasure to spend this time with you, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.